On Nationwide this evening, we're in the capital to hear about the efforts to keep alive the memory of well-known people who once lived in different parts of the city. One of the most recent plaques to be unveiled came about when the woman we're about to meet discovered her relationship to a figure who was instrumental in Irish theatre history, and she set about ensuring that his contribution would be remembered for generations to come.
It is an honour to be here at the unveiling of this plaque. And I want first of all to thank Nuala Holloway, who suggested that we would put this plaque up in the first place. And both Paddy and Micheál are members of the commemorations and naming committee that took the decision to erect this plaque.
The scheme that we have is very much a citizen-led scheme. So people make suggestions, individuals, organisations, sometimes family members, and it's great to have members of the Holloway family here. Also, we initiate at times our own ideas for plaques, and they do represent a very rich tapestry of history and life in this city over many, many years.
3, 2, 1, go!
Joseph Holloway, architect of the Abbey Theatre, was recognised for his work this year by Dublin City Council when they erected a plaque at his former home at 21 Northumberland Road. Nuala Holloway had learned of Joseph's pivotal role in designing Ireland's National Theatre when she herself began to study acting.
Maybe the fact I was an actress and people would have asked me, are you related to Joseph Holloway? And then I began to investigate who, and I thought there was something in the back of my mind, yes, that he has to be. I went to find out more about him, of course, and I discovered then he was the architect of the Abbey Theatre.
Nuala, who also enjoys painting, was struck by the family resemblance when she looked at old photos of her distant relative.
When I was painting him, it kept reminding me of my father. There's a great look there, my late father. Even my father's brothers, so definitely there's a relationship there. He was born actually in 71 Lower Camden Street, and his father had a bakery there, so there was plenty of money there for, as I say, there's money in dough. And he went on then to Castleknock College, and then he went to the art school, the Metropolitan Art School, and it was from there he decided then that he was going to do architecture.
Joseph Holloway was well placed when it came to securing the position of architect for the Abbey Theatre. He was in the inner circle, which included Yeats, Lady Gregory and Englishwoman Annie Horniman, the Abbey's earliest patron.
He had the advantage of knowing Annie Horniman, who put the money forward. He put his plans together and put them forward, and I think the first lot wasn't accepted, and then he tried again. And so Yeats was very much part of it too, and Lady Gregory. So between them, they decided then, yes, we'll go ahead with this. It's big enough and we can afford. It cost, I think, around £1,300 at the time. No more than 1,700 was the figure given.
Holloway's design was to become home for the newly formed Abbey Theatre, which was to open in 1904.
On this original footprint where we are now, there was the old Mechanics Institute and the old Savings Bank. And Annie Horniman, who was a really amazing kind of patron and fundraiser of the National Theatre, asked Joseph Holloway to come up with a mechanism to be able to integrate those two buildings into one. So that's where the Abbey Theatre sprung from.
The First World War may have stopped Holloway pursuing a career in architecture, but he soon discovered his true passion lay not in design, but in theatre itself.
But really he never fully practiced, apart from doing the work for the Abbey and all of that. He was devoted entirely to the theatre. He was
an avid theatre goer, and I think the fact that he also kept a diary, he kept notes, he also was seemingly an amazing caricaturist, and he kind of was in rehearsals and taking drawings.
For over 50 years, Joseph Holloway was to become the Abbey Theatre's most consistent first-nighter, and his written account of each play was to total 221 manuscript volumes with a detailed review of every performance.
He wrote what he believed in, and that sometimes it mightn't have satisfied people either. He could have hurt people by being too honest, but that's the way he was.
On Thursday, December the 27th, 1904, the Abbey Theatre opened its doors and Joseph Holloway was there to record the opening night of Ireland's National Theatre.
So at the opening of the pretty little Abbey Theatre, the Messrs brothers, Fay, covered themselves with glory, both as the guiding spirits of the new theatre and as actors. The night was a memorable one, and the house was thronged and genuinely enthusiastic. W.B. Yeats's legendary play On Ballia Strand was most excellently played. A really fine poetic impersonation of Cuchulainn was that of Frank Fay. It was a performance any actor might be proud of, and one I shall remember. Kathleen Ní Houlihan, which followed, was exquisitely enacted, and all present were thrilled by the weird beauty and intense pathos of Miss Maura Nic Shulik, her embodiment of Kathleen. The opening of the Abbey Theatre was the most momentous event of the year in Dublin, to my mind. History may come of it. Who can tell?
Joseph Holloway was a man of independent means, and with his Abbey connections, he secured a front row seat to the work of Ireland's early playwrights. Many of these productions received glowing reviews from him, but not all were received favourably.
He was critical of some of the writing at the time, The Plough and the Stars. He went along, always describing who he saw there and who were the actors and praising what they did as well. And yes, he felt there was one scene with May Craig, I think it was the actress at the time, and she played the part of the prostitute, and he said there was no need for that. So he was critical of certain, and he would always say it.
On the opening night of John Millington Synge's infamous Playboy of the Western World, Holloway notes,
"The Abbey was thronged in the evening to witness the first performance of Synge's three-act comedy, The Playboy of the Western World, which ended in fiasco, owing to the coarseness of the dialogue. The audience bore with it for 2.5 acts and even laughed with the dramatist at times, but an unusually, brutally coarse remark put into the mouth of Christopher Mahon, the playboy of the title, set the house off into hooting and hissing, and amid counter applause, and the din was kept up till the curtain closed in. On coming out, Lady Gregory asked me what was the cause of the disturbance, and my monosyllabic answer was blackguardism, to which she queried on which side. The stage came from me. Then I passed on and the incident was closed.
Holloway immersed himself in Irish culture and divided his time between art exhibitions and opening nights at the theatre. He became a patron to many, and his property in Northumberland Road became home to the work of several artists.
There's so many of them that he did help, and they even wrote to him. There's letters where they wrote, and especially Cyril Cusack's, there's a lovely letter asking, his advice. And then for the same for painters, he had, there was Sean O'Sullivan was on the up, Patrick Toohey was another. They were on the rise as painters. So he bought their work, and he bought a lot of work, and it was at the end of the years. It was in 1944 he passed away, but in 1943, 44, he began to think, well, I haven't got long more in this earth. So he started to think, since he didn't have family, he started to think, well, what am I going to do with all my pictures and all my stuff? So he contacted the galleries and, of course, the National Library.
The vast collection of Holloway's diaries and drawings are now housed in the Holloway collection at the National Library. The public can read not just Holloway's theatre reviews, but his observations on key moments in Irish history, like the death of W.B. Yeats in 1939.
Our great poet W.B. Yeats has passed away at Menton in the south of France. We all feel his loss immensely. He has been such a figure of importance in our midst for so many years. Personally, I don't think that anything sweeter or more lovely in words has ever been written than come from the early lyrics. And what a dreamer he always appeared to be as he walked along the street with his hands clasped tightly behind his back and his head erect, with his eyes looking into space and his big black butterfly tie waving in the wind. His greatest achievement for the Irish stage remains his prose play, Kathleen Ní Thuilleán. It shows you the respect he had for Yeats, even though they might, in the beginning years, I think they had their little differences as well. That's as Yeats is no longer around, he's ready to show him respect.
Joseph's diaries are clearly a valuable record of significant events in Irish history, as he witnessed the uprising of 1916 unfold on Dublin's O'Connell Street.
Looking down the deserted O'Connell Street with a dead horse lying as it was shot under a lancer on Monday last, one thought desolation has come on the city, so gay and normal but a few days ago. I write this as I sit in the parlour of number 5 Cavendish Row, from the window of which room I can command a view of O'Connell Street and can see the flag of the Irish Republic still floating over the GPO.
Yours is a history frequently marked by the greatest...
Joseph Holloway was not Nuala's only famous relative. More recently, Nuala discovered that she was related to the former American president, Barack Obama.
I read in the paper where he had a Holloway connection, and I thought, oh, I will offer a painting with Holloway, my name on it, of course, and to the American embassy in Ballsbridge. And they said, oh, we're getting lots of gifts, you know. We're just choosing what we want. So I said, can I send you a picture of what I'm doing, what I have in mind? It's a famine ship which would be appropriate for him because his ancestors went to America on one of those famine ships. And so it was about a week later, they phoned me and they said, we like the look of that. Could you bring it into us? It would have been about a year later. This guy comes with a package, and inside was the letter from Obama, all nicely wrapped up.
Another reminder of Nuala's ancestry is the portrait of Joseph Holloway, proudly displayed in the Abbey Theatre.
It's no accident that the portrait that we have here in the Abbey Theatre has him with a theatre programme in his hand, and I think that's how he'll be fundamentally remembered, as a man with a deep, deep love of theatre who had a fundamental part at the beginning of the National Theatre.
Of course, every time actually I come here, I feel his spirit, and of course I always go look at the portrait of him, which brings it home to me as well. But it's just a feeling of his spirit is still here.
Joseph Holloway has an amazing legacy in Irish theatre generally. I think someone quoted to me recently, he was like the kind of Samuel Pepys of the Irish theatre, so I think that really is an absolute amazing legacy for us now to have.
It means a lot to me. It's important to have him remembered. You hear that Yeats, you hear that Gregory, you hear Edward Martin, they're all getting kind of mentioned. But here he was, the architect of the Abbey Theatre, the original Abbey, and I felt it's important to have him remembered. And especially he lived for 60 of his 83 years in 21 Northumberland Road. So that's a long time to have lived in that building as well. And so that's why I feel it's important that he's remembered.
Have you forgotten?
I'm looking this way.
It's only 10 years.
I'm searching. Can I get everyone to look this way? And I'll get one last shot.
Well, the plaque scheme was set up to commemorate people from various walks of life, places indeed and events from Dublin's history. And so this one is a literary plaque, and Dublin of course is a literary city, and that literary reputation is very important to the city. And we're really pleased to be commemorating somebody who made a good contribution to our literary heritage, the Abbey Theatre in particular, but also the theatre in Dublin in general over the first half of the 20th century.
So here, people walk by, it's a great place for tourists, and he'll be remembered for all time, and that makes me very happy. Every time I go by and drive by now, I'll say a little prayer for him, and no doubt he's looking down on us today, so it's great.
What an interesting man who clearly had a passion for all things theatre.